I was born in the late 70s in New Orleans. I was always brought around the arts, from theater, from seeing people with costumes and the Mardi Gras floats. And I think being from New Orleans, you have such a melting pot of culture. I would see these incredible people with costumes and makeup. And I just remember being like, I know this is a calling. I know this is what I want to do. My mother always bought Vogue, and I was influenced by that because I would look at the pages of Vogue and then I would look around like people in Mardi Gras. And I remember seeing all the beautiful stories that Annie would do with Grace. And I was like, wow, there's a cross pollination here. What they do with Mardi Gras, the floats, and then costumes and the makeups, and then seeing what fashion does with editorials and advertising campaigns. I had every single Vogue cover, every single sitting story of Phyllis's and Grace plastered on my wall. And I can still pinch myself because they're two mentors of mine that early in my career I started working with, and they're very dear friends. And I still am that girl in New Orleans that can't believe that I'm get to work with these incredible icons that really changed what fashion is today.
I'm Jill Demling, and this is Going Rogue. Today's guest is Francelle Daly, a New Orleans-born makeup artist whose career didn't come from legacy luck or ladder climbing, but pure hustle. She started at the Saks counter and worked her way onto sets with Annie Leibovitz, Craig McDean, and Grace Coddington. Her work has since appeared on the covers of nearly every major fashion magazine. Francelle built a reputation for collaboration, calm under pressure, and makeup that actually holds up in real life, not just perfect lighting. Her path was anything but traditional. She never assisted, she learned on the job, and she carved out a space in an industry that rarely holds the door open, which is why she built LCB, Lovecraft Beauty, not just as a beauty brand, but as a creative community, something that simply didn't exist when she was starting out. Let's hear her journey from the makeup counter to building a community of her own when Francelle Daly goes rogue. And to see the images we discussed today, head to our Instagram at goingrogue.podcast.
How are you?
Oh, I love your backdrop.
I like your backdrop too.
Oh my God, this is gorge. I have to take a picture of this. How do I do it? How do I take a picture of this?
Command Shift and 4, you could take a screenshot. I'm very excited to be on this.
I'm excited too, because you're a makeup artist who I respect and who I love as a person. But we haven't worked together so much, so it gives me a chance to learn along with the listeners about how you got to where you are. I do know one of the craziest experiences I've had in my career is one of the craziest experiences you've had in your career, or I hope it was, because if it gets crazier, then man, I do not know how you are still here. So the one shoot we did together that I'll never forget is the Celebrity Cruise campaign.
Oh, goodness.
And it's just funny because I have not thought about this for a while. And I ended up wanting to kind of remember when it happened exactly to kind of put it into some context for everyone that's going to listen to this crazy ass story. And I actually found one of my offer letters to one of the talents. But okay, so before we get into talking about your career, let's just tell everyone about this crazy story. So I'm going to kind of tell my side of the story, and it only goes so far because you know the other side. And it was just really weird how it happened because it's in real time. It's happening. Everyone's getting information in real time and no one's able to really talk to each other. Okay. So this is a shoot that we did together back in December 2021. So the United States had reopened from this COVID lockdown, and cruise ships were definitely one of the businesses that was severely affected for a time and seemed to be a culprit as well. But we had pretty much reopened. But December is when we saw the rapid emergence and the spread of the highly transmissible Omicron variant. And this quickly reminded all of us that the virus was still active and still here. So I was brought on to cast the campaign, which is going to be a total of 12 images with different individuals representing various ethnicities, sexual orientations, abilities, sizes. And here's kind of the general letter because I found it and has all the info. So I'm, talking to one of these activists saying, obviously, we know what COVID did to the travel industry, especially the cruise industry. As part of this initiative, the Celebrity Cruise Company will be inviting a select group of activists and global thinkers on an all-expense-paid cruise with a family member or friend to enjoy a luxurious holiday and to be photographed by Annie Leibovitz while at sea. The ship will leave out of Fort Lauderdale on Sunday, December 12th, and travel around the Caribbean, making several private excursion day trips. As I mentioned, all expenses will be covered, and the talent will be welcome to stay for the entire cruise. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so because this was going to be their first cruise at full capacity, so this was the first big cruise, and we were going to be on it. So we all meet in Fort Lauderdale, and it's 12 images, but some are doubles, some are groups. So because we weren't going to do every picture on the ship, some were going to be at the different ports. So we have a bunch of talent meeting us in Fort Lauderdale, getting on the cruise with us. And you're laughing because because we're reliving this. We are reliving this. But some people are going to meet us at the two different ports. So we have talent that are flying to St. Martin, flying to San Juan. 3 different photos were going to be taken at these different locations. Okay, so we all meet in Fort Lauderdale, and we all had to have PCR tests. And those you had to get within 3 days. So we're leaving on a Sunday, so most of us are getting the tests done on the Thursday or Friday before. Okay, so we all meet in Fort Lauderdale. It was Annie and her photo team, Karen Mulligan, who I've had on, and who's actually co-hosted a couple of the episodes, and her production assistant, Anna, Sally Hirschberger, your close friend, all of our friends, who was doing hair. Jessica Deal was styling. You were doing makeup. And we had the following talent: Jillian Mercado and her best friend, Jacoby Jacobs, who is a trans model. We had Warris and his wife, Maddie, John Forte of the Fugees and his whole family, Tarana Burke, amazing activist, and her husband, the Olympic skating siblings, Maya and Alex Shibitani, the Shib-Sibs, Paula Mathey and her baby, trans rabbi Abby Chavez-Stein, and Rachel Flight. The designer Awet, Michelin chef Daniela Soto Inez, and amputee activist and model Lauren Wasser were all going to be meeting along the trip. Okay. So I vividly remember sitting near you and Sally while we were waiting to board. I wasn't sitting next to you guys, thank God, but near you guys. And Sally was talking about how tired she was because she had gone to a party Friday night. And we were talking about, we can't party as like we used to. We get so tired. And she's like, it's like a 2-day hangover. I remember that 2-day hangover. So we all get on the boat and get settled. There's a welcome party. I don't believe you two went to that.
No.
Right, exactly. Okay. And then Monday was the first full day of shooting. So we did shots with Warris and Maddie in their room. We did Abby Stein by the pool, Paula and her baby, and Tarana Burke and her husband. And that night, we were all going to go to dinner to celebrate Jessica's birthday.
That's right.
But you and Sally had booked spa appointments.
That's right.
For massages. Sally wasn't feeling well afterwards, so you decided to go back to your cabin to feel good the next day. Okay. So the next day, since they were reshooting Abby, I slept in a bit because I think we had crossed over a border and we lost an hour. Right. So I was only going to go down to the pool straight from my cabin. And this is a huge ship, people.
Huge.
Huge ship. Multiple levels. I don't even know how many football field lengths it was, but I got lost multiple times. So I decided to go straight to the pool where they were going to be shooting Rachel second. So Abby was first at the pool. Rachel was second at the pool. So when I get down there, I don't see Sally, but Rachel Flight is bald. So I didn't expect to see the hairdresser there. Before that shoot had wrapped, I went down to the main room because it was going great. There's no reason for me to be there. I was going to go to the main room where all the wardrobe was set up and your stations, the hair and makeup stations were set up. Sally was not there. When I got to the room, it seemed like something was going on. But I was like, oh, I don't know, whatever. So then Karen tells me that Sally didn't feel well, so she went to the medic. They have a whole like mini hospital there. And I'm like, okay. So then I think Karen gets a call. Now it gets a little confusing because everything's happening very fast. And we're trying to be hush hush. And Annie doesn't even know what's going on at this point. So Karen must have gotten a call, and then you can tell me what actually happened at this point, that Sally had tested positive for COVID. So I'm freaking out myself, just thinking I have to get off the ship in San Juan, the first stop, to get back home for my daughter to pick her up from school. So I'm thinking, oh my God, what are they going to do? And Karen tells me right now they're looking at all the footage. I guess they have cameras everywhere. And they're seeing who Sally's in contact with. And it's for a certain amount of time, a certain distance away. And I'm like, shit. Like, I know I had talked to her in the fitting room. I don't know if there's cameras in the fitting room because it was where people were changing. But other than that, I hadn't really seen her. But I guess they're watching, it was probably 36 hours of footage. And as they're seeing someone close to her for a certain amount of minutes, as you raise your hand and no one can see, they're pulling people, like they're sending some sort of guard. Because I saw the
so scary,
right? So while Karen's explaining it to me, a guard walks in and starts saying people's names, and you don't have the chance to do anything. They wait for you, pick up your things, we're going, and you are sequestered in your cabin. So this is all happening. Annie doesn't know because Annie's shooting. And then Annie doesn't come back to our wardrobe area. She goes straight to scout the next location, which is the restaurant where Jillian and Jacoby are going.
That's right.
Right. So as people are being plucked out of this room, I'm sitting there by myself, like, what's going on? Catherine McLeod, who's been with Annie, she walks in to get some research, a basket of research to bring to the restaurant. The guard is there. Catherine, she says, yes, you're coming with me. So Catherine hands me the basket of research and says, you have to bring this to Annie. Yeah. So this whole thing unravels. So at that point, I mean, the shoot's pretty much off. And, over the next, I want to hear from your side, because over the next hours, we had a shot that afternoon. The rest of that day was canceled. The ship sibs are supposed to be getting off with me. They're the only ones that haven't been shot yet. John Forte hasn't, but he was going to be on the cruise longer. The ship sibs had to get off because they were going to a competition or something like that. And I'm thinking, please, can't we do this? Can't Annie do it with like a plexiglass? Because they've come on this cruise to be photographed by Annie, not to do a campaign for celebrity cruises, to be photographed, because the thing that got people to do this for such, a low fee was they'd get a print of themselves from Annie. So now, how's this going down for you? Because I wasn't there when.
Okay. So this trip was probably one of the most craziest of my career. I remember getting the call I've never been on a cruise before. It's not my thing. I'm a sailboat girl. My parents have sailboats. Don't like cruises. I'm a little claustrophobic. So I was already going in there being like, OMG, what are we getting ourselves into? But it's Annie. It's going to be fun. We always have a hoot with her. So
Yeah.
I was just thinking like, okay, where is this going? And I
Yeah.
remember the guard picking Sally and being like, you have to get quarantine. You have to go into your room. No one said the C word. No one said COVID. Like they were like,
Oh.
Sally, you have to go and just be removed. I remember Anna and Karen being like, you might have to do hair. And I was like,
Oh.
OMG. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I can ish, I'm doing this long enough. I can comb somebody's hair. And I remember it was John Forte and his family that we shot. And then slowly after that shot, the guard came to me and was like, we saw you on the cameras with Sally Hershberger. You have to
Oh,
be.
wait. So we got John Forte's shot before.
So
Oh
I
my,
was able to like, because I was like, oh, great. John's hair's braided. Like,
yeah.
so just like put it back. I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, where is Sally? Because no one was really telling us like what was going on. I
Oh,
knew
so
she
you
wasn't,
didn't know? So,
they didn't want to say to everyone
right.
officially that Sally had COVID. And I was like, where did Sally go? What is going on? And then Karen and Anna had came to me. We were like, I think she might have COVID. Don't freak out. And I'm like, my gosh, I didn't have COVID yet. And luckily I did not get it from that trip. But, I
Oh
was
my
just like, this
God.
was a brand new thing. The world was shut
Yes.
down at that point of just being like, even understanding what the COVID protocol would be in the future. So it was just very crazy because there's so many people on that boat. I have never experienced a cruise ever. And it was like just a very overwhelming experience just being on that and being stranded, being on the boat in the water with everyone. And then they came into the room and they were like, you have to go into your room. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I want my purse. And Sally had
Oh,
the purse. I had
yes. I
like,
remember that whole
and I
thing
took
when
the
you're,
purse. I was like,
yes.
Sally's Hermes bag. I'm like, I have to, she's not just leaving it in the,
Yeah, because
Like,
Sally was texting me from whatever dungeon they had her in. I
bless
mean,
her.
yeah. So basically, they didn't want everyone to find out. They had to like sequester all of us, but they also didn't want all the passengers to freak out. So
Exactly.
we're all wondering, first of all, feeling terrible that we brought COVID on their first cruise when they had been COVID free. And I mean, what a disaster. Then they also didn't want this chaos and
Yeah.
confusion. And so they ended up doing an announcement,
Yeah.
which they didn't say who, but I mean, God, it was just crazy. And people are looking at me, the talent, poor Warris. I mean, he's gone
Oh,
through
I know.
so
I
much
know.
being not being allowed on planes and he's Sikh and to have someone come into the place where he's getting a facial and pull him out, him having no idea what's going
I
on.
know.
I mean, like Tarana Burke was looking at me. I'm like, it's not my fault.
It
But
was really surreal because they brought us back to the room, and then not only did like you cannot leave, they put an armed guard in front of our door. Luckily, I was right next to Catherine McLeod. So our cruise rooms were beautiful. We had a balcony, thank goodness, because you can get some air. I think I would have lost my brain if we literally could not have any window or anything like that. Poor Sally was quarantined, which I came to find out because she's calling me freaking out and be like, I'm in a room with no window. It's so crazy. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm trying to manage everyone's feelings because I felt so bad for her because we didn't know what was going on. Like the protocol of that ship at that time, it was a new thing. So I think
exactly.
everyone was just cautious about their passengers, which is probably the protocol.
Yeah,
No,
it, it's their whole industry. Their
exactly.
whole industry. And they had put all of these new protocols in place to make people feel safe to go on a cruise again. That was the whole
Exactly.
point. I was actually doing some research on it this morning just to kind of see when they started doing their cruises again. And they slowly worked up to a full capacity ship.
Hmm.
They're very, very careful because the last thing they wanted is this to happen because it
Hmm.
proved that the everything they had in place was not foolproof, But now that I was thinking about it, she was talking about going to this big party Friday night. And that's why Annie, even though she tested negative, was nervous because this was a new strain we were not
That's right.
familiar with. And Maya, the Shibsibs, Maya Shibatani, had just had surgery not so long before.
Right.
And she also said that Sally had come to her house to cut her hair before the party on Friday.
Right.
Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so concerned. It was that she was that close to her that Friday. But it's obvious she probably got it that Friday night. I mean, she would have tested before and it would have been negative. But oh my God. And didn't she have to be like medevaced or something? How did she get home?
She got on I think the medevac, the helicopter picked her up. And she was so funny. She's like, well, Lise, honey, I'm flying private back to I mean, that's the thing. The great thing about Sally Hershberger is like her sense of humor. Like she finds joy in everything,
Yeah.
I laugh at that now. It was not a laughable scenario when we were on that ship. And I remember seeing Catherine on our balconies together. I'm just like, what are we doing? How what is going on? We can't leave our room. Are they going to deliver food? Like, how do we eat? Like, it was this thing of this, like, all of a sudden, go to your room. And they didn't even want me to bring my suitcase. And I was like, no, I need to I'm getting my kit. I literally put it together. But then I was like freaking out. I'm like, what is Annie going to do? There's no makeup artist on the boat or a hairstylist. They're going to get someone in a spa to do it. Like jokingly.
Yeah. I mean, no, it was nuts. And yeah, I totally know what you were saying about just the claustrophobia. I had only been on a cruise once when I was young with my family, and it was like for family bonding, and it was awful. It wasn't this type of ship, but we were in bunk beds with the straps, and
oh goodness.
Yeah, I mean, the rooms were small, and the weird thing for me is all of you guys were locked in your rooms. I had been cleared with only Jessica's assistant and then the photo team. And all the talent are locked in their rooms because they all had their hair done by Sally.
And then I was around them too. So
right.
It became a trickle down effect. And I'm just like texting, and then Catherine's telling me from the other balcony, like, it's everyone's being quarantined. I'm like, is Annie being quarantined? Like, oh my gosh, what is going on? How are we going to get off this boat? But it's one for the books.
It is one for the books. We had to be quiet about it at first, and now it's not a big deal. But I think that medevac costs like $200,000, by the way.
Oh my goodness. I
So
mean,
they basically
it's the protocol. They were nervous about other passengers getting
Of course.
sick, which is, it's a beautiful ship. And when I look back at that, it's like they did exactly what they needed to do to protect their passengers. So it was
my God.
an interesting trip.
I mean, listen, it could have been so much worse had you guys come out that night, because we were all going to the John Forte performance.
That's right.
In the lounge. So,
which I was so excited to go to. Like, no, you have to go stay in your room with a guard in front. Because I even opened my door and I was like, and I shut it because I just wanted to see. I'm like, this is crazy. And I had tested negative. I'm like, what? Because they kept testing us. And I'm like, I'm testing negative. Why? It's protocol. It's the way. But we weren't informed about how COVID worked,
Right.
We only knew before that. But with this type of variant, it was slowly, in someone's system. And then you can test positive after 48 hours of hanging out.
Exactly. And which is exactly what would have happened. Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh, geez.
Well, anyway. So let's get into how you got started.
Okay.
So through the conversations I've been having, I've realized that many, if not all, of my guests knew at a very young age what they wanted to do. And half were encouraged by their parents to pursue their dreams, and the others weren't. Maybe their parents were fearful that the industry was too out of reach, or they just simply didn't even know these types of jobs existed. I had no idea there was someone that booked celebrities for magazines. But I know that you grew up in New Orleans, which is the best place for a budding artist to live. I talked to Mary Howard when she was on, and she's from there too. And we talked a lot about how New Orleans and her upbringing there, particularly Mardi Gras, inspired her to go into the arts. She was like a tennis player, and then she was working on the Mardi Gras parade floats, which
Mhm.
led her to New York, where she worked on the floats for the Macy's Day Parade. It's just amazing. I've been there once with Karen, and I can't even imagine growing up there. It just seems like a place that you don't live in, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? That you
Mhm.
like go for this amazing experience and then you go back to the real world. But it must have been magical to be surrounded by so much music and culture all the time. Can you tell us when and how you decided you wanted to be a makeup artist and how growing up in New Orleans contributed to that?
Mhm. Well, I was born in the late 70s in New Orleans. So growing up in the 80s, you had the World's Fair, you had several different, festive events, Mardi Gras included. I was always brought around the arts, from theater, from seeing people with costumes and the Mardi Gras floats, and then also being heavily influenced by the MTV culture of seeing people with makeup and looks worldwide. And I think being from New Orleans, you have such a melting pot of culture. I would see these incredible people with costumes and makeup. And I just remember being very early on in my career or very early on in my life, rather, of seeing that and being like, I know this is a calling. I know this is what I want to do. And my first job, I was 18 years old and I started working at the makeup counter. My mother always bought Vogue, always bought Harper's, always bought me monthly magazines to fill my brain with fashion and art. And for me, when I look back at that, I was influenced by that because I would look at the pages of Vogue and then I would look around like people in Mardi Gras. And I remember seeing all the beautiful stories that Annie would do with Grace. And I was like, wow, there's a cross pollination here of like seeing Mardi Gras floats and then costumes and then with the makeups and then seeing what fashion does with editorials and advertising campaigns. I did not know anything outside of that besides people's names and credits.
Oh, wow.
I remember being very young, and my dad will laugh at this, is that, I had every single Vogue cover plastered on my wall. I had every single sitting story of Phyllis's plastered on my wall and Grace. And I can still pinch myself because they're two mentors of mine that early in my career I started working with, and they're very dear friends of mine. And I still am that girl in New Orleans that can't believe that I'm get to work with these incredible icons that really changed what fashion is today.
Well, that's amazing that even back then, I mean, Jimmy Paul talks about that a lot. Being a young kid, his mother was a hairdresser, so he'd watch her get ready. He also talks about that getting ready and that transformation. And that's what, I mean, I get chills talking about it because it's true. That empowerment it gives
Mhm,
a woman to change or to feel beautiful, that confidence that you get from feeling beautiful. And, a
mhm,
lipstick can do that, a mascara can do that, just the act of transforming. But,
mhm,
and he also talks about when he was little being in his room, and that's what he would focus on, those credits. Like he calls
mhm.
himself a groupie. Christian, the famous hairdresser, called him a groupie too because he knew all the names. But when I asked him how did he even know to do that, it's almost like it finds you, I guess.
Mhm.
And that's almost like when you said a calling, it almost found you. But were you that girl that wore makeup or before she was allowed to, or that would take her mom's makeup? Or do you remember how putting makeup on yourself, how that felt?
I remember my grandmother, she's still alive, she's 92, lives in Mississippi. And I remember her being very worldly. She would travel to Paris, she would travel to London. She always wore like bright orange lipstick. She always had a stiletto on with hose, which was always so chic. And I would always watch
Yes.
her get dressed. And I was always taking her lipstick and seeing her, and she would always wear a liquid liner. And then I started getting older and seeing the MTV music channel and being so heavily influenced by music. especially from Europe, and seeing on how people wore makeup. So that also came to play within the music industry of New Orleans. I remember being in high school and going to parties and listening to The Cure. I'm a bona fide goth girl forever.
Wow.
But
I
I
can
wouldn't
see that.
wear
Yeah, I can see that. And I was thinking that's the time period where even Ziggy
100%.
Stardust, you're getting
Uh,
David Bowie just earlier, and then you're going into that
mhm.
goth period. And even if you think Cyndi Lauper, and then you get all into the
100%.
80s, you're getting that bright
Mhm.
makeup, lots of color. You're going from the goth black. It was a great time for
It
makeup
was
and
a great
music.
time. And feeding your brain with not only knowledge of music and musicians, but looks. I'm a club kid at heart. My entire brand is based off that. And I think in the world now, as I'm mature and older, I look at that time in my life of just studying the magazines and studying the music videos and just trying the looks. I remember Girls Just Want to Have Fun with Cyndi Lauper and seeing half of her shaved head and her blue eyeshadow and her lip. And I was like, these are my people. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And my mother was very supportive in that. She would always take me to Tara Records and we would buy vinyl and we would buy tapes. And she's like, buy whatever you want. Not grandiose style, but in a way of like, you can pick one thing out. And I remember getting like The Cure on cassette and playing it till the tape broke. And stuff
Yeah.
like that, where it was all based around the makeup and the hairdos of those
Well,
music
I
videos.
can totally picture you for some reason as Ali Sheedy in The Breakfast Club,
Love. Yeah.
So what was your makeup style and how did it work at school? Talking to Andrew Bevan and other people about clothing, it really was your identity, right?
Mhm.
That time period in high school or even a little bit younger in middle school, you're trying to fit in. And even if your style is different, sometimes you end up wearing what everyone else is wearing just to fit in because wearing something different right away defines you as different, right? As an outsider. So it was the Benetton sweatshirt.
100%.
Everyone, and I remember I would be wearing Grateful Dead t-shirts and I never listened to them, but it was like
Right?
so
Exactly.
clothing, makeup, how you do your hair, that was so much about who you are, what you're representing outwardly, right? Even if it's not how you feel, it's either to fit in or to be different. Were you doing your own thing at that time as far as how you presented yourself, even though you felt a certain way?
Well, I went to a Catholic high school, so I had a uniform.
Okay.
And for me, I just remember looking at the music videos and pinpointing like, okay, we're going to do Cyndi Lauper this week. And I would try and see what's in my closet and emulate those styles that I saw. And then when the whole Forenza, Benetton, jams, that whole thing, this preppy movement that came into New Orleans that all the girls were wearing at my high school, I got into that too. But I also always had an edge. I always wanted to be different. I didn't have blonde hair, put sun in my hair. I wanted to like
Right.
do a color like Cyndi Lauper's or,
Yeah.
seeing the flock of seagulls and backcombing my hair and like putting tinfoil on my collar. Like I remember my mother just being like, I love that song. She was always very, very supportive of me like being different. And in high school, I'm dyslexic and I had a really hard time with school and I hated it. And my mom was like, you know what? Like, why don't you take the GED if this is what you really want to do? I just wanted to be in the arts. I didn't
Right.
know exactly like what direction I wanted to go in, but I knew that this was my calling. It was calling to me to be not only myself, not only different, but to try and find something that is good for me to do and to grow with. I
Right.
think that's the biggest part about being an artist is that you never stop learning and
No, of course.
it's feeding the brain of as much information that I could possibly do.
It's interesting about the Catholic school. I mean, I did my time in Catholic school early on for a few years when I lived in Sacramento, but Tani talks about the uniform and she's a huge supporter of it for kids' schools because it democratizes it, right? So the kids that have less than are not feeling less than. Let's
Mhm.
put it that way. Did your face then become where you could show your individuality if you're all dressed the same? Did makeup then become more important? Could you wear whatever you wanted as far as makeup at that school, or?
I would always get in trouble. They were like, take it off. Take it off. Like, I would always like, I remember going to class and I remember just seeing Bowie's a huge influence on me. And I remember like seeing him and I did a huge like orange cheek. And I walked into school and
I love
the chancellor
it.
was like, absolutely not. Take that off. Like, where are you going? And I'm like, it's just so different. And people, all the kids in school would be like, oh, you look so cool. I'm like, I'm so into David Bowie.
Yeah,
Pretend
yeah.
to smoke a cigarette. But it's that thing of like seeing something and just being so attracted by it and just wanting that. I just wanted to be one of them. I thought
That's
it was going to be a
awesome.
singer. I cannot sing at all. I was just like, okay, well, I had no idea that you could be a makeup, hair person, a photographer. I didn't know that. 13, 14 years old. It's like you don't have those dreams at that point. It's more about what you see on TV and emulating that style.
Yeah, we totally didn't know. When I think even about college, I went to a liberal arts college and I loved art. So I was doing art, but it wasn't even a school that I don't recall having like journalism. It was a very small school. So I would never have thought about who puts the people on the magazine covers like that. And it's a very small industry. So it's not something you would know about unless you either fell into it or you knew that there is a person that did makeup for these shoots, not in a salon, maybe not even at a fashion show. I didn't even know there was fashion shows. You know there's a photographer and you know there's someone that's being photographed, but all the other parts are not something that people necessarily talk about or talked about then. It's like you're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher. You're not like, oh, I'm going to do makeup for that Vogue cover. So is that what led you, that your interest in everything makeup, and you couldn't sing, so you're not going to be David Bowie, but maybe you could do David Bowie's makeup? How do I get better at it? So is that what led you to that first job?
It's funny. Like I was looking back at some of the notes that I was just gathering for this podcast, and I remember working at the counter at Saks Fifth Avenue. I just turned 18, and an art director came in and was like, "Hey, I'm shooting the band Styx. We need a groomer." And I was like,
No.
"What is a groomer?" I had no idea.
Oh
It's like,
my
what is
God.
going on? I'm like being a vinyl DJ now, and I'm like, Styx. Oh my God.
I
That's
know.
my first job.
I know.
I remember it was in the French Quarter. It was in a studio there. And they were like, oh, the guys just need a little bit of concealer, a little bit. I'm like, I do that at the counter. I
Wait, they came to you. Wait. But they're big at this time, right?
Huge. Huge. I guess a local photographer needed someone. And luckily, they came to my counter and they were like, we need someone really young and cool. It's going to be a 20-minute press photo scenario. They just need a little concealer. Could you do it tomorrow? And I think they paid me like $200. I was like, but yeah, I guess. I'm like, what do I even bring?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm
like,
thinking. Because concealer, that's much harder than saying they need some eyeliner. They want to look like Green Day. I mean, that's easier. A black eyeliner, but it's your skin tone too. Like, I guess
And
you're not doing
luckily I
a
had
full
that
foundation,
experience.
but
Yeah.
oh my God. So what do you remember about that?
I just remember just being like so green and being like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. Is this actually a job? Like,
Yeah.
is this a job that you could be someone doing this at photo shoots?
Yeah.
The photo industry at that point in New Orleans was kind of non-existent. And it was just weird that it fell in my lap. I was talking about this to my protege, Madrona, yesterday, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about Styx. And it's nuts when I look back at that because I just threw myself in. No is not an answer. I always say yes. I am just going to try and figure it out. And I did. And luckily, I had the experience working at the counter with several different skin tones. I'm like, I can color. It's not rocket science. I could do that. And they did want a little eyeliner, and I could do that. But I didn't have a kid. That was my first foot. And I would just turn 18. And I just remember, I'm like, I really want to do this. How do I do this?
Well, so how did you even get the kit? Did you take stuff from the counter?
Yeah.
Because you know what? When you said this just fell in your lap. Okay, so that's been a trend that I've been hearing from a lot of people, and I talk about this a lot in other episodes, is it falls in your lap because your lap is open or your mind is open. That's how it falls in your lap. It doesn't just fall in anyone's lap. It's the certain person it falls in their lap. And when Orlando Pita talks about he loved cutting hair, he doesn't know why. I asked him at 14, what was it? He's like, I don't know. So that's when it's like, if you have it, it will happen. He wasn't even thinking about being a hairdresser. He's not like Jimmy, who was looking at all the credits, but his brother was working for a photographer and called him one day knowing that he had cut people's hair and said, our hairdresser fell out for today. We need a hairdresser. You've got to come here. And he said, I don't even have a kit. He goes, grab money, go to the drugstore and put it in a paper bag and pretend you're into sustainability. That's the type of thing. Both your first shoot, his first shoot was like, wait, what? That is wild. And then you caught the bug. You saw.
Because I mean, in New Orleans, there wasn't a lot of places where you could be in the arts. You're either in theater, you're either in music. And then I was like, I want to be in makeup. And I'm like, where can I get a job? And I remember getting a job at Saks Fifth Avenue. I worked at the NARS counter. I worked at the Stila counter. I just kind of did freelance all around. It was awesome because I was getting $20 an hour. And I was like telling my mom, I'm going to be able to move out and get my own place because I have enough money to do so. And then...
And I have a question real quick about the counters, because nowadays I know if you go into Sephora or even the bigger department stores, the people that are doing the makeup at each brand, they come from the brand. So did they give you any sort of training, even a little bit?
Not really. To be honest, you just learn. Everybody, I was a sponge. I just wanted to learn as much as I possibly could learn about doing makeup and working with someone. Because to be in someone's personal space, and especially in New Orleans where the climate is very humid, you're doing all walks of life from the very young to the more mature, you have to learn all of that. And I thank God that I went through all of that process very early, because it also taught me a lot about skin tone and about what to do with different ages.
Right. You're not just doing models, right?
Exactly.
But
models are easy.
Yeah. But back in the day, I remember we would go to a beauty counter before like the prom, like
100%.
because you could get and you just have to buy a couple things. So you're getting, some people are asking for a full look. And it's not.
And I would be so happy when that happened, because I'm like, I can put lashes on, and I just, the more you did it, the more experience that you got. And especially at that time in the late 90s, it's just like, wow, it's like everyone was wearing looks. They were wearing liner, and Saks Fifth Avenue was the chicest place in New Orleans to buy stuff. They didn't have any other higher end retailer there. So I was exposed to Prada and Miu Miu and all these amazing clothes and labels and advertising that I've never would be able to be exposed besides through magazines. So I would get very excited on my lunch break. I would look through the collections. And I remember like when the employee sale would come, I would save all my money and buy a Miu Miu dress and being like, oh my gosh, I just want to emulate these women in the magazines. I just wanted so bad to be a part of that world.
And did your mom let you practice on her? And
100%. She still does.
Oh my gosh. So then when did the transition to New York happen? Because that's a big leap for anyone. And everyone has talked about kind of getting there, because, it's a scary city. Like for someone that's not from there. Grace even talks about there was nothing like it, and she'll never forget it when she's driving toward the city, sees New York City and just the possibility, the fear. It's big, but also anything can happen. I've made it to at least here. The first step is to physically get here, but it can eat people up and spit them out. It's done that to many a talent. So how did what happened during that period of time?
I remember being at the counter and I just wanted to get out of New Orleans. I was ready. And my childhood boyfriend at that time worked for Vidal Sassoon, and he got the opportunity to move to Los Angeles. And we moved. I moved to LA, and I was thinking like, this is it. This is it. I went to all the agencies. I went like, anything that anyone would tell me to do, I did. And just to get experience. So I just started freelancing, doing things in LA, mainly still with counters and working with Estee Lauder and all the brands that they had at that time, and just being freelance and still learning the curve, still learning how to get my foot in. I remember going to agencies with the crappiest pictures and just being like, I just give me a chance, give me a chance. Calling up people, give me a chance. And you makeup artist, here I am, here I am. And just the hunger of just wanting to be in the world of that. And then we lived in LA for about 5 years. And then in 2001, I moved to New York, and that was it. I remember getting off the plane and being like, I found myself. This reminds me of a much, much bigger New Orleans. It's a
Right.
melting pot of everyone I loved. I loved just seeing the looks of everyone here. And I just remember being like, how am I going to make that? How am I going to make it? I'm just going to, do as much as I possibly can to have a career in this business.
And
And
you never assisted a
never,
makeup artist? So
nope.
so the first time you're going on a shoot, you were hired as the makeup artist.
Yes.
Wow. And did you think you didn't want to start as an assistant, or it just
I didn't
happened
even
that?
know that you could do that, Jill. I was
Oh,
so green in that world of being also just doing freelance at counters and working with people. And I was still making great money. And then Estee Lauder promoted me, and I was doing like artist training for the brands that they had. And that was super fun. But I realized I didn't, because I also, going back to that, I realized that I didn't want to be in corporate America. I didn't want to do that side. It taught me a lot. It really made my personality and all of it come out, because I was quite shy in the beginning. And being in front of people and working with people, that really made a huge difference, and a huge learning curve of being able to do that. And I just remember, I'm like, I got to get out of the counters. I got to get out of this. And like, how can I do this? So I started asking people that I knew. I had a friend that worked at Industria, and I was like, please, I'm like, how do I get into this? Well, you need to assist. And I'm like, and I even asked people to assist. It just never came to be. No one ever hired me as an assistant. And I think that's fate. It's very strange
yeah.
that, I was always open to do it. But I remember getting my first job and just being like, this is it. I'm going to put my kid together and I'm going to do this. And that was 2005. I got my first agent. And
Yeah.
it was
How did that all work? So you come to New York and you're still hustling,
hustle.
calls, walking into places. I want to assist, or I want to do this. I want an agent. How does this work? But had you done shoots in New York before going into that agency where you got
Yes.
signed? And
Yes.
how did you get those shoots? Just
I just
from,
started meeting people. I would go
okay.
out, again, being heavily influenced by music. I would meet
Hmm.
people at the clubs. I would ask people that really like interest me. If someone had a full look on in New York, I'm like,
Yeah.
what do you do for a living? Like, oh, I'm a hairstylist. Like, oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yes, of course, of
So
course.
I'm
Because,
that
yeah,
person that like kept on asking people. And that's how
yeah.
I met my first agent.
Okay,
And,
because that's how Jimmy talks about that too, because he had moved here not really thinking about pursuing hair. Like he tried to work in a salon. He was terrible. He wasn't a good assistant, and he was a club kid. So he'd be
Mhm.
going all to all the drag clubs, and
Yeah.
people again met his agent in a club. They all said, "You do your makeup and your hair so great. You're always getting ready with a bunch of people." And it's like that whole world in the clubs were artists, right?
Yep.
So you're bound to be in a group with hair, makeup, drag performers doing drag performers' hair and makeup. And just the clubs in New York City at that time is
Oh
where
my
it was
God.
at. That's
It was
Paper Magazine.
unbelievable.
It's, yeah.
Yes. Yes. And it's kind of full circle with what I do now with my makeup brand. But back then, I always said, you meet people all the time in New York. If there's a hunger and if there's a drive, you can make it. It's the hustle and
Yep.
bustle. It's
Yep.
non-stop. I worked from sun up to sun down just to try and network and meet people. And it worked. It took a while, but it really did. It worked. But I think that's also the determination of knowing I don't want to go back to New Orleans. I
Right.
love visiting, but I don't want to make a life there. I don't want to make a career there. I want to be in New York where it thrives and you walk out the door and see so many walks of life and the kindness of people here. It's something to me that when I look back at my career, I'm like, I will never forget the chances that people gave me and the
Well,
attitude.
but on the flip side, yes, there can be nice people,
Yeah.
but this industry isn't known for nice people. It's competitive. Definitely your side of it.
Hmm.
I was lucky in a sense. There was only one of me at the
Hmm.
magazine, and there's only a handful of us that do what I did in the industry. But it's a very competitive world for hair and makeup, and the competition can lead to wanting or not wanting new blood to come in, right? So, did you experience that early on in your career? The darker side of the industry? I think mental health is a huge thing, especially in this industry. And listen, there are more guardrails when people were less likely to call out bad behavior. There's no HR on
Hmm.
photo shoots. There's no one to talk to if something happens on a shoot. And we all know that poor hair people are always the scapegoats on every shoot. And a hairstylist was telling me the other day, even recently, it happened where they were screamed out by a photographer and nobody said a thing. So it is what it is. It's unfortunately accepted and it's a small industry. So you don't want to be the difficult one.
Right.
But I would love to hear about your experience in the industry and about that first shoot and how that kind of kicked off your work on magazines.
I think because I never assisted, you have to have thick skin going into this. People would tell me stories, be careful, such and such has an attitude, or they're very strict, or they're very cold, don't take it personally.
Mm.
Again, just knowing some of the tips that people told me, regardless of any type of circumstance that happened in my early career. And luckily, knock on wood, nothing bad ever happened. No one ever really screamed at me. I always was very like diligent about making sure everyone that I was supposed to be talking to and everyone that had input in that look or the looks that we were doing, that I made sure that I checked the box. Like, okay, you want a smoky eye? Okay, let's talk about that smoky eye. What are we wearing? What's the clothes? But I learned that very early on being a collaborator. I never
Mm.
went to a shoot being like, this is what we're going to do today. I knew that was the wrong thing to do. And I
Right.
remember meeting a few people early on in my career that assisted Stephen Meisel. And at the pinnacle of who Mr. Meisel is, really like the story is like they really it taught me like how to act, being that I never assisted anyone. I always was willing to bend. Whatever we needed to do to get the picture, I would do, and I still feel that way. I never walk into any shoot being like, "Oh, I have all this experience. Let's do this. Let's
But I have a
talk about it."
question. I have a
Tell me.
question about that because I've heard from different hairstylists, and I would assume it would be the same with makeup, that some are photographers, hairstylists, and some are editors, hairstylists. Obviously, the ideal scenario is they both have the same perspective on what the hair or makeup should look
Mhm.
like. But when they don't, you have to listen to one or the other, right?
Yeah,
You're on a
absolutely.
set,
Absolutely.
and sometimes the photographer's the one that is choosing the team a lot of times, but a lot of times it's the editor because they work at the magazine. So the
Mhm.
photographer's working essentially for the editor, for the
Mhm.
magazine that employs the editor. So it can be tricky. And between Orlando and Jimmy, one is editor and one's photographer. It doesn't mean always, but
Right.
if you're being told two different things, I know it's all collaboration, but I've been there when there's a difference of opinion, So
Right.
how do you, I mean, you're two close friends. Well, you're close with Craig, you're close with Annie, and you're close with
Mhm.
Grace and Phyllis. I would love to know what
I
you
mean,
kind of were
especially
told and how
early on.
you. Yeah.
Especially early on, I just learned how to listen. Shut up and listen and have respect for the people that have been doing this for a long time and be a sponge and learn as much as you can. And I think that mindset of going in there because to be honest, I was terrified when I started because I never assisted anyone. And everybody that I worked with did. And I didn't really know the protocol of doing any of that. And I look back at that now and I'm really glad because it gave me a fresh sense of just going
Mm,
into every single shoot differently. You might have someone that's very cranky and yells at people. We've all had family members that have done that to us. And I just
right.
remember just having thick skin and being like, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. You know how to do a smoky eye. You know how to do this. Get out of the mindset of being like, you can't, you can. You can't leave. You're like, oh, you
Right.
can't just like, okay, I'm not dealing with this and just leave. You can't.
Right.
You have to learn how to work in that atmosphere, especially when it was difficult, especially when you're working with very top people. And I remember one of my first American Vogue jobs was with Miss Phyllis Posnick and Norma Jean Roy. I believe it was for a Broadway show. One of like we shot so many portraits in the beginning together. And I remember being such a fangirl of Phyllis and freaking out when I got confirmed for it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, she worked with Mr. Penn and Helmut Newton and Ton Corbin and like all these amazing people. And I was like, I cannot believe I'm working with Phyllis Posnick. I am so scared.
And
And
she goes, beauty. She's the
uh,
beauty sittings editor. So
icon.
you're, I mean,
Like
for
I
you, that
still
is, yeah,
yeah,
everything.
pinching myself. And I remember walking in and she looked at me and she's like, I don't want any foundation on the face. And I'm like, okay, no problem. We can just put moisturizer. And I remember her taking her finger on the models and making sure that there's no foundation. She's like, are you sure there's no foundation? I'm like, there might be a little powder just for the oil, but there's no foundation. But
Oh my God.
that's a test because I'm sure
Yes.
Phyllis had worked with people that wanted to put foundation on, but I listened. That was my thing. I always like listen to what someone tells you. And if you could always add it, like, you,
Right,
you know,
exactly. Yes,
so it was
that's what Orlando was saying, and that you have to start where you can build up, never start where it can't be, or that it's too long to change. We all
exactly.
know how many more minutes till they're out of hair and makeup.
We're always being rushed now.
Right. But how about if the talent is asking for foundation? Because that's probably what happened. I think that's what's frustrating
Yeah.
to editors nowadays. And I saw it happen post COVID. That was the perfect
Mhm.
excuse for talent to say, I want my own team. I'm doing a
Exactly.
film. I have to have my bubble, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. And then suddenly that kind of stuck. The talent has a lot more control over the hair and makeup, and those people are being paid by the talent. So
Yeah, exactly.
they're not going to say no, even
Hmm.
though they probably are like, I'm never going to get to work for Vogue again or with Phyllis if I don't listen. It's always that balance. And makeup it's tough
It
because
is tough.
I know for me, and Karen and I talk about this, we're just used to doing our makeup the way we do it. You have to have a lot of faith. You have to have
Yes.
a lot of faith that it
Yes.
might not be what you do, but you have to
Hmm.
understand there's lighting, there's retouching, there's how the photographer works. It's not going to just look like it looks when you're looking in the mirror in daylight, but
Hmm.
it's your face, and a woman so attached to
Yes.
their appearance that unless you're a professional model and do it all the time. But I've seen, when a celebrity that we're shooting goes in and washes the makeup off or something, and the makeup artist is in tears. And I would love to know, even if any of those situations have happened to you, but you can't take it personally. And that's what you're saying. It's a job, although it's personal.
Mhm.
It's your art too. It's not just a job. It's your canvas just happens to be someone else's face.
To add to that, I think you need to know the room. Read the room. Read the room. And if you have an actress saying, like, I want more makeup, bring everybody in. Let's have a conversation about it, especially at the level that we work at. I think it's important to communicate. Communication's the key. I never want to leave anybody out. And I think that's the biggest thing too of just learning of who the directors and the photographers, what they really want in their subject. And we'll talk about how Annie works later,
Yeah.
but it's my thing of like really knowing some information before you go in there about what the subject's about, and then seeing the collaboration in the morning of looking at the light, looking at what the hairdo is going to be, looking at what the clothes are going to be, most importantly, that really sets the tone. And my biggest thing, it's like, it's again going to that, you can always add. And I never really ever bring anybody back to the makeup chair. I like to work on set.
Right.
To see it in the real light. I want to see
Right.
the mood in the
Well,
set.
also that avoids them looking in the mirror.
There you go.
And I was just thinking about what a good trick would be. And I'm not a makeup artist, but have you ever pretended to put more on? Like if you had pretended to be putting the sponge in the foundation and making the person feel like you're putting it on, but you're not putting it on.
Yes.
Just because it's a psychological thing too.
It
with
really
people.
is. It really is. And some people, depending on who the director or the photographer is, can be extremely intimidating in front of the camera. I'm starting to learn that too, being in front of the camera for the makeup brand that we have. And it's really understanding, and that kind of comes full circle for me, the subject. Like when you're with a room full of people, especially at a very high level, and you're in front of everyone and you don't feel your most confident. And I think for me, it's just knowing and having the security of, don't worry, we got you. We're going to do this, and making sure that subject feels comfortable from what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's exactly what Orlando Pita said. And I know you respect him as much as we all do. So like a master saying, even if you're nervous, be confident because you're working on someone's face. You can't show that.
No.
Right. I've learned so much from him, from listening to him, and it works for any industry. But you have to, even if you don't feel it in the moment, put those nerves away, put on a game face, act like you're whoever your idol, Kevin Aquan, act like whoever you have to act like.
Yeah.
Because that's where everyone else in the room is going to feel confident if they see you confident, right? But
it's our job to make them beautiful. It's our job to set the tone and set the character of the jobs that we do. And I think that's one of the most important things that I always tell the kids that I mentor, is that confidence comes a long way, and always put yourself in the subject's shoes. It's not easy being in front of the camera, and it's not easy wearing something that you don't want to wear, especially when it comes to celebrity talent. You know, a lot of them all want to have the same type of look and the same type of clothes. But when you do something that goes into a bit of the dramatic type of shoots, that also could be very difficult for them. So it really is just trying to make that subject as confident and as comfortable as they possibly can be, and knowing that, okay, we can always add. Let's see if the photographer wants to start off with something a little bit more natural. Let's have a conversation, and then we can go into that. That to me is key.
So everyone kind of talks about the age before Instagram and how important these magazine shoots were for your tears and to build your book. So you were talking about your shoot with Phyllis. Was that your first Vogue shoot, or?
Yeah.
Wow.
Phyllis was the first person of her caliber that I worked with, and Norman too. I just remember being in that, and I was so excited. My then agent got me the job and was like, "Hey, I think you would be really good for this." And I'm like, "Great." And I couldn't believe it when I got confirmed. I was pinching myself. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Phyllis Posnick, I can't believe it." And I still get that way. I love Phyllis. But yeah, and I couldn't believe my name was going to be in American Vogue. The girl in New Orleans had every single issue plaster and spirit gummed all over their walls. I couldn't believe it. And I still am that way. I'm incredibly humble and grateful for the opportunities that I get in this business, because I absolutely love it. Regardless of how crazy it is, I love my job.
Yeah, I just remember seeing my name on the masthead, and it's like, is this real? But when I was looking you up on models.com because that's kind of my go-to to see all the work. For as many big commercial fashion magazines that you've worked for tons of these indie magazines, many of which I wasn't familiar with just because I was in an office at Vogue for so long.
Mm.
But you've worked for them all, and even currently, right? From ID, obviously, another magazine.
Mhm.
I had never heard of like Beyond Noise. And I ended up going to all these sites, and they're super cool magazines.
Super
Heroin Magazine, Cross Current, About Face. I would imagine working for those magazines, you have more freedom and maybe get to do more avant-garde work, or even just work with up and coming photographers or cool stylists.
Mhm.
You know, have more larger range than you would, especially at an American Vogue. If you're doing, the covers are so commercial, and we're not going to push it too much unless it's like Lady Gaga. Otherwise, it has to be a pretty girl, right?
Right.
We're not recreating the wheel with the cover. So can you talk about the difference, the experience of those, and maybe why you like working with them?
I like the range. I think independent magazines like to push the envelope a little bit. They like to be different
Mhm.
and create images that are different, especially with a magazine like Beyond Noise. Sarah Richardson is the editor in chief and fashion editor, and I've worked with her for quite some time. A lot with Craig McDean, and I really like being able to do different types of things. The range is very important in my career and in my path in life. I like from the very pretty to the very dramatic, and for me, with those types of magazines, especially with celebrity, like another magazine we did with Winona, which is one of my favorite things that I've done
Mhm.
with her. You're able to create a character,
Right.
where American magazines, they're very pinpoint on the beauty. And I don't
And
love,
them being recognizable because they're trying to
there you
sell
go.
it based on the celebrity. So,
Yes. And they don't like to shy too much out of that realm. Where
mm.
in Europe, it's very much about creating an image that is different. And I like that. I like having the best of both worlds.
So what is this image where she's all
So
covered in white?
so that's Ali Michael. That was a really fun shoot because they came to me and they were looking at some of the images that I've done on myself during COVID, because we didn't have any models, that started doing a lot of prosthetics and a lot of like avant-garde looks on myself and my protege Madrona. And they saw something that I did and they were like, "Would you want to do something like this? We could paint them white." And I always love a challenge. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, it's going to be outside." And I believe it was based on something that Apple was coming out with, and they
And
all
what, oh, is it a campaign, not, or is it a
it was like an
magazine?
advertorial for that magazine. So,
Oh
and it
my
was so
God.
cool. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing that you're adding tech and then you're adding body painting. But again, for me, when it comes to that sort of thing, it has to be timeless. I think a lot of the times when people do that sort of thing, Lady Gaga is a perfect example of someone that can be in very beautiful, pretty makeups and then go to the highest extreme of the theatrical makeups, but it's still very beautiful. So
Right.
with the European magazines, it's that happy medium that you have to find. And again, you can have as many conversations that you can before the shoot, but it always changes when you get there. That's what I always say. I don't love a reference. It's something that Phyllis
Yeah.
taught me too, and early in my career. You can show me some pictures, but it's about the conversation that we have in the morning of being like, okay, we're going to paint her white. We're going to stand her outside. How to make sure that the paint doesn't run. What are you going to
Yeah,
use?
that's what I was looking at. I was like, she's on some sort of rock, but you're not seeing any white on the rock.
And again, it's the challenge of what medium are we going to use?
Yeah.
And that's the fun part about my job. I love a challenge. I love being able to make product and make makeup that doesn't move. That's my whole thing about Lovecraft Beauty is that
Oh my
because
God.
we're club kids, we go out in all these cool looks that take 5 to 6 hours to do. And I do a lot of stuff with Suzanne Barsh, and I love her. She's like the club kid icon of our era. She's a queen to me, and she loves what we do. And she always asks us to do stuff with her. That's another pinch me moment because I remember seeing her in the clubs in New York when I first moved here and being like, I want to be her. I want to be Suzanne. I think she's so cool. Always have tried to mix the makeup arts with my personality, but also within the entire culture of club kid world versus fashion too.
Every day is a surprise for hair and makeup.
Yeah.
Makeup even more because you don't necessarily know who the subject is. If you know who the subject is, you don't know what you're getting that morning. And with skin, yeah, like hair, you could show up and I could have been told Jennifer Lawrence's hair is long. There has been situations where her hair was cut or it was a different color than I thought. That's why working with Stephen Meisel and Guido needs images in natural daylight, like the day before. And I'm like, hey, Adele, will you send us pictures? Because if he's making wigs or pieces, it has to match. And you're having to prepare without really knowing. But skin, that can change by eating something, right? And I've seen it happen. Someone ate something on set, broke out. Right. You have no idea if they're going to be splotchy. You have no idea if they're having their period and they're going to have acne. I mean, you almost can't really prepare.
Right. That's why we have an 85-pound suitcases.
I know. That's crazy. But while you were talking about the makeup, after talking about that image, I have been on the search for an eyeshadow that stays. I have one of Pat's that like shimmery liquid eyeshadow, but only one color really works. They don't come in a lot of shades. And I've been trying different ones because that's one thing, the creasing. So I love how you're saying, because I cannot wait to check your line out because that makeup that stays, I try to spray my face after with whatever I got sent for free from some milk brand, whatever. But let's talk about the brand and then we'll get into Grace, Annie, and Craig, but because we're already on it and I would love to hear about it. So a lot of makeup artists have brands, others are talking heads for brands because it's a lot of work. When you're the job that you love is being on set, making magic in real time, but you know what you like and what you need to do it doesn't exist. You need to create it, but that's starting a whole company. So not many people have the bandwidth emotionally or obviously physically to be able to do both. So when did you start the company, and to talk more about why? But I'm super interested to know more about Lovecraft Beauty.
It's loving yourself, loving your craft, and loving your beauty. That's kind of the play on words that Lovecraft Beauty stands for. And I created it because I wanted to create a platform for other creative artists. My biggest thing of being young and being in the clubs and seeing all these amazing, beautiful people with the looks, and I didn't really see a makeup brand that really helped people get to a place and be noticed. I think also because I never assisted, I wanted that for myself. And I'm like the mother hen of a beautiful group of people that come to our studio. We have a waiting list. I'll take the photos and I'll do whatever I can to help someone's career because I really do believe in the craft. I really do believe in these incredible people that from soup to nuts, they get dressed up and they might have like $5 and on a budget to buy a stick of makeup, but they can do so much with it. I started it in 2018 And it's kind of based on my husband's model because he has a clothing brand and a jewelry brand. And I was like, I think I could do this with makeup. He's a graphic designer as well. We started doodling and thinking of names. And I was like, well, I keep going back to Lovecraft Beauty. I'm like, loving yourself, loving your craft, loving your beauty. And I wanted to create really fun products and fun products that kids would want. My demographic is young, and I priced it for that. We're at a great price point that kids can.
Yes, you are. I appreciate that. It's for every,
And
we
it's
all,
for everyone.
yeah, we all need affordable makeup.
Exactly. And it's a way for me to create product that kids want and we want. All of the things that we make are pretty much waterproof because Madrona, my protege, and I go out with Suzanne and do all these amazing looks. And it's about that. And I do a lot of events at some of the clubs of just coming in and doing a performance and doing makeup with them and just being introduced because my thing when I was young, I didn't have anyone to help me. And so Lovecraft Beauty is that. It is a collaborative, it's a whole world that people can come to our studio and be a part of. It's family.
That's amazing. And because I'm going to link your site where anyone listening can buy your products, I would love you to tell us some of the must-haves, any of the favorites, the fan favorites, or if we wanted to get like 3 products, what should we get first?
So we're all about our primers because you were talking about.
Yes.
I have oily eyelids and I have a problem with when I'm doing very theatrical makeup. If I'm doing a oil-based makeup or a water-based, my skin is oily, so the makeup doesn't stay on. So the face primer and the eye primer are one of the first things that we made, and they're great sellers because the kids love them and it makes the makeup stay on. I have a great licensing deal with Ipsy and BoxyCharm, and they have really put Lovecraft Beauty on the map with the demographic of different demographics. We're big in Mexico now because of them, and I'm so grateful for having been introduced to them and working with them because they've allowed me to make beautiful product. The gel line eye pencils are one of our biggest sellers. We have 12
that's what I want.
You can sharpen them and they're waterproof and, they come in fun colors and we have some other fun colors coming out later in the year. I like to hear what people want. This is a question that I'm asked a lot. In a world that there's so many makeup brands, every celebrity has a brand, it is really about creating something that people want. And the great thing about being a makeup artist, I have a 95-pound Rimowa suitcase that I bring around with me and it's got every single brand. I love makeup. I love brand. I don't stick to one brand. I have everybody's brand in there.
Right.
Really about a community. I am not the type of person where like my makeup's better than theirs. It's more, I am a sponge when it comes to makeup. And I really love to see what people put their minds to. I love seeing new brands. I love seeing the older brands. I worked for NARS for many years. I'm a big NARS fan. When it comes to materials and mediums, I think you can't go wrong. And I think that's the blessing of going into a store like Sephora or a counter that there's something for everybody and you just have to try. I think a lot of people get intimidated by there's too many options, but there's so many different amazing brands out there that there's going to be something for you for sure.
Right. And that's the way to think about it though, because there's no one brand that can have every single product be the best. You just can't. Your face, all the different things we paint on our face, right? What we know right away is eyelid, lip, cheek. There's going to be someone that's great with all the range of colors. It's like, be good at one thing and just be psyched to have a great line of eyeshadow. That's the thing about credits with beauty is someone like Billie Eilish. She has her hair and makeup guys, but it's mostly her makeup guy because she only uses vegan makeup. And this makeup guy is like, I know who makes the best vegan mascara. I know who makes the best for her skin, the best vegan, because it's not going to be one brand's not necessarily going to be able to. So she's not going to do a beauty campaign because she's not the type to pretend she uses something. Okay, so we've talked about Phyllis. Now let's talk about Miss Coddington. So I know she is one of your mentors and a very close friend of yours. And I would love to know a little bit about your relationship and how you two met. And then some things that you've learned from her on set? And it doesn't have to be specific to makeup. It could just be on navigating the industry or a set in particular.
I met Grace at American Vogue. My old agent introduced me to her, and it was love at first sight. I always knew who Grace was, and she changed my life. We're very close. We have 3 persons each, which is really sweet. My littlest Barnabas is from the same breeder, Pam, that she has her kids from. What I've learned from Grace is breaking the rules and being a rebel. Grace is an icon.
Yeah.
And she always has told me, like, be you, like, always do you. She loves that I do all this crazy makeup on myself and all of that. And I never in a million years would ever think that the girl in New Orleans looking at Grace's pictures on my wall, it would be staying at her house and hanging out with her, with the cat kids, and going to lunch and dinner with her. She has such a big influence in my life. And I really do think, she are the best editors in the world. She really is.
Yes, she is.
Her and Phyllis for different reasons, especially coming from the Vogue world. But those 2 women really took me under their wing when I was young and was like, you got this, you can do this. And still to this day, I'm that kid that pinches myself. Like I love them both dearly. And
no, and they're not the types to necessarily take chances on a new makeup person.
No,
You know what I mean?
no.
But they'd be the ones that could get a new makeup person confirmed by a photographer because their word will trump the photographer.
Yes.
So right there, it's opening up all the
Incredible.
doors.
And I've done some of the most amazing images with Grace.
Yeah, take us behind the scenes of one of your favorites.
Well, one of my recent favorites is we did a beautiful story with Muse Rianne Tinhawken. Like we worked with her a lot with Jamie Hawksworth, and he shoots all film. I love Jamie's pictures. They're incredible. And I remember Grace is like, we're going to go to all these locations in Brooklyn and it's going to be really hot. Julianne Dees did the hair and this giant, amazing, like sculpture held hairdo. He's another amazing hairstylist, hairdresser. Like he's a wonderful human being. And I remember he did the hair and Grace was like, what do you think about the makeup? And I'm like, why don't we do a cheek and like a weird orange lip that matches her hair? Let's just try that. And she's always the type of person to really challenge me. She never tells me what to do. She'll give me a gun and be like, what do you think about this? And then I'll give her something. She'll show me the clothes. She'll always send them to me the day before, just so I have that in my head. And I really love that. It really makes you think about the narrative of who the character is going to be of the day of the shoot. And I just remember being on set and we're walking up and down the highway in Brooklyn underneath this bridge with this light. And it was like a 13-hour day. And Grace was loving it. She's like, oh my gosh, look at the light. Look at the light. Let's put the Prada on. And Rianne's like all the way across the street. And Grace had put her in this amazing Marc Jacobs. It was from that huge collection with the dress and like the thing. And it was so incredible that, again, like you want to pinch yourself because the pictures are so magical and they're just so timeless. It's a thing where I can't even explain it. It's like you're in the moment. And then when you see it in the magazine, it's just,
and if it's film, you're not able to see. I mean,
you don't see anything.
So is that better for you in a way because no one can critique it or want to change it because you see the image in your head. You do this all the time. You know exactly after an hour what it's going to look like, what it will look like if you put a layer of something else on a lip or where someone else might not be able to see it. Like Phyllis said to me when I had her on, and I know you listened to it, that she got to a point where she allows the hair and makeup people to do their process too. It might not look right then what she has in her head and what she said she told them she wanted, but she has to give them time to get there, respect their process, and maybe it could be better than what she thought in her head. but that's the trust too. But everyone's trusting everyone with film.
It's so true, but that's how we started. We didn't start in the digital world. A
Right.
giant screen, and you're like zooming in on the poor and being like,
Right.
Jesus. Like,
Right.
I remember looking through a loop with the Polaroid and being like, yeah, I think it looks great. So
But that just made me
I love
think.
that.
But that just made me think in a way, thank God we did move to digital, because Instagram you can zoom in. So you wouldn't be allowing the artist to have the same ability to zoom in when people, it's almost like, unless you weren't going to show that image anywhere but in the magazine, but if you're going to be putting it online and on a small phone where people can zoom in, you almost have to take that into consideration in a
Yes,
way. Oh, that's
100%.
so
And I
crazy.
think Jamie's whole method of shooting, it's all film. So there's no, and sometimes there's a Polaroid, but it's the trust, the group. You can trust Julianne.
Yeah.
You can trust me. You can trust Megumi, the manicurist, to give you what you want as a photographer. And you got to know your director. You got to know your photographer. And that's why I've always been someone that brings everything, because you just never know. And it's that one time that you don't bring the glitter
Right.
pack. You're like, why didn't I bring my glitter? I'm like,
Right.
it's that scenario of like knowing who you're working with and
Yeah.
trusting it.
Well,
And it's
that
that
just,
happy scenario when you open it up and being like, it's amazing.
yeah, that just made me think there is a real difference. And I know there's always been a real difference between an editorial makeup artist and a celebrity red carpet makeup artist. But it's also that you're not necessarily painting someone's face to look good right then. You
Right.
have to, what it's going to look like through the light, printed out. So it's not about what it looks like to your naked eye right there. It's projecting forward into all the things that, when it's taken through that lens, printed onto a piece of paper, what's it going to look like?
100%. That's why a lot of the times I like to work on set. It's always going to be different, and the light is different in the makeup room. And yes, it's great to prep someone and get them going, but it's especially
Right.
to build the look. I do a lot of that with Craig. And it's like we can start off pretty simple, but then it's like you never know until you're in the environment that you're working in. Like until you see
Right.
the real true light, the set, in the outfit, the clothes, and then the idea like, oh, you know what? Hold on one second. I'm just going to add, a line on the eye, because you just feel it.
Now, photographers, besides Grace, you have worked with some of the best photographers in the business. Two in particular with whom you work frequently are Craig McDean and Annie Leibovitz. I cannot think of two more different people. So I would love to talk about both of them individually. So here are some questions to think about when you talk about both, because it could potentially show their differences. And who knows, maybe when it comes to what you do, they're not so different. I know their style is different. I know how they work on set is very different. And those are two very important things. So let's start with Annie. How did you two meet, and what was the first shoot you did together?
I met Annie from wonderful Karen Mulligan, who we all love and know. My first shoot, I believe, was with Phyllis for American Vogue for one of the sittings for a Broadway show. If I remember correctly, it might have been The Elephant Man with Bradley Cooper.
Oh,
But
I was on that.
it was so much fun.
I
I was
was on that.
I couldn't believe it. But I think I worked before that with her, but that was my first Vogue thing I did with her. That was like one of the first major
Yeah.
things. I love Annie. I've worked with her for a very long time. There is no one like her. The appreciation I have for that woman, on how she shoots, on how she is so, it's like micromanaged in a way that like everything is done the day before. No one else
Right.
does that.
No.
I've been all over the world with her, and I'm so impressed by how she's even able to, the mind of like her images. And I'm so grateful and humbled to be a part of her pictures, because you could do something very natural makeup, or it can be like, Francelle, we're going to paint Cindy Sherman like the Ed Hopper clown, and you're going to paint her white and with little red, little slits in the eyes. And I'm like, what? I'm like, yes. I'm like, yes, Annie. I was like, but you don't know that until you're going in to that. And I'm just so impressed, and it really taught me to be a better makeup artist, to see the way that she does things. It's so impressive.
And
Well,
you feel like she lets you do your thing. She doesn't micromanage that part, or
it just depends. It depends on the narrative
right.
of what she's doing. Sometimes she's very open to ideas. Sometimes she has a very set mind of what she wants. And I appreciate that and I respect that, because the way that she works is unlike anybody else I've ever worked with. Of just the machine of that entire studio, how their days before scouting, to a T of how things are going to be done
The blade of
during hours.
grass. The blade of grass that has to be.
Exactly.
But have you gotten into a discussion, let's just say discussion, not argument, it could be an eye or a lip or something that you just really felt it would be better to do it one way, and did you win or lose the discussion?
Well, actually, the last thing I did was the cover of American Vogue with Gigi Hadid. And I remember I was like, Annie, I really want to do a dark lip on Gigi. And she's in this incredible antique car. And Annie was like, I don't know. Maybe let's just see it. And we did. And she saw it and she loved it. And for the cover, she didn't want it. And that was totally okay. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
not fight you on that, because again, it's knowing your director, knowing your photographer, and the respect that you have for them.
Yeah, and you had just gotten a big win there. You got a big win there. It's knowing
I was
when
like,
not
great,
to
I
push
have a
it.
dark lip, says the goth girl who loves dark lipstick.
No, I loved that cover shoot. It felt very Paolo Roversi in a way. It felt very different for Annie. It was different for American Vogue too. It felt romantic, and it just definitely took you to a different time period than the 3/4 smile with the wind blowing in the blue sky,
Right. And Orlando did the hair for that. And I remember him and I talking in the makeup area and just being like, I'm really feeling this lip. I really want to do it. And he's like, do it, see what happens. And I'm like, but that's the happy magic. You don't know that until you see it. And that day, which no one knew, it was like 20 degrees at that location. It was freezing. And like, Gigi is so incredible. She's so professional. She is such an icon, in a way of just like, no problem, I got this. I'm like, doesn't matter. We had like hot water bottles all over to like keeping her warm. She's in all these beautiful clothes that Alex Harrington pulled.
Oh yeah.
And it was unbelievable. And that's the magic. I don't think I've ever experienced that type of shooting besides working with Annie. And it really is truly magical. Like, you have goosebumps when you're on set, and it's probably the most intense set that you're ever going to be on, because she works so fast and she has her own method of way. And I respect that so much. One of my favorite advertising jobs that I did with Annie was for Montclair, and we went to Iceland, and the locations were extremely hard to get to. Like, one location was 4 hours away, and you're in a car and you're just like, where are we going? And I remember Annie had a very specific Snow Queen reference that we locally cast, this beautiful model that she was also known to the conditions, so which was important because it was on top of a mountain. And I just remember Annie showing me this illustration of a Snow Queen, and I was like, oh my gosh, I get to paint her white. And I remember Holly Smith did the hair for that, and she did this amazing like white updo.
I love that campaign. I love that image. I know exactly the image. I know exactly how her hands were. I know exactly how she was standing. I love it.
I remember like I had a walkie-talkie, and Annie's like, can we just make the Snow Queen a little whiter? And I was like, no problem, I got this. I looked at Karen Mulligan and Catherine McLeod. I'm like, okay, how do I get up there? And I'm like, put snow boots on and like get up there.
No way.
Made her a little bit more white. But I was like, this is one for the books. This is movie magic, people. Like, this is incredible. And I remember my assistant being terrified, because it's just like the conditions were so insane. But Annie is all about that. It's such
I know.
it's
Now,
like It's incredible.
Yes, we all know what happens when you're hot, what happens to your makeup, right? And what happens to your skin. But it's just as bad when you're cold. Your eyes are watering when it's
Ugh,
really cold. So that causes any eye makeup.
has to be waterproof.
Yeah, like when you're walking and if any snow's coming or any of that, and then the texture of your skin changes when it gets cold. Not only the redness, but how did you, was it constant reapplying or did you use your products at
I
least?
used theatrical. Like that really got me into doing theatrical makeup
Yeah,
and knowing you have to know your elements. Annie's not
right.
gonna wait for me if the whole makeup
No.
that can't happen. Like you
Or if
can't.
it's not holding.
Yeah, the amount of test that we did, I remember in my studio of just making sure that this is going to be the right product because Annie's extremely specific about how she wants the texture to be on someone.
Oh,
Makeup.
yes. And I know that with no shaving, just even with,
Exactly.
Yep.
It's that same thing. So it's that making sure that you have everything. And I remember going, Alcone's one of my favorite stores in New York. It's a very theatrical makeup shop that you can buy everything at for that type of thing for theater. And I just remember just being on the phone and being like, okay, I need to make sure that this is not going to move, but I have to make sure unless she wants me to back it up, I'll be able to do it. So it's that thing of it can't be a full latex scenario or something be
Right.
able to take off, but it can't be something that if she cries, it comes off.
So you're
So
like, hey,
trial and
assistant,
trial and
I'm gonna
trial,
I'm gonna put you in a meat locker,
right?
and come out in an hour. Oh my God. And then take us behind the scene of the shoot you were talking about with Cindy Sherman.
Oh my gosh. So we did that one, that's sitting with Grace. And I remember when Annie asked me to do it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Okay, so being someone that now takes pictures of myself and my protege, Cindy Sherman is a huge influence on my career. And I just couldn't believe that she was up for it because Cindy obviously does her own makeup in those sittings that she
Hmm.
does. And she asked me and she's like, absolutely. And I remember Grace and Alex Harrington getting the clothes together. And she had all these amazing, like beautiful antique clown outfits. And we picked the right one. And Cindy was so amazing. And that picture, I got a print of it. I couldn't believe it. I cried when I got it. I was like, oh my God, Annie sent me a print. I'm like, I've made the Annie Leibovitz team, even though I've worked with her for so long.
Yeah.
Like,
And
I just couldn't
did
believe
you
it.
do the other artists
I
too?
did all of them, yeah, and it's
What were
incredible.
they like when they saw Cindy like that? I mean,
They
did
were
you,
just
so you must have started on her first so that they weren't sitting around.
yeah, we did her first, and then the other talent came in there. It's a mix of incredible artists.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at
Uh,
it. That's why I was like, are they like,
they loved it.
yeah,
They
they're
were
like, we weren't going to do that.
and
Oh,
a lot
shoot.
of them knew her, a lot of them knew Cindy
Of
from
course.
past things, and they were incredible. It was like that shoot in particular was one for the books for me. I was like, "Okay, check it off the box." I literally worked with the world's best photographer and Cindy Sherman and Grace, and I was just
Yeah.
like and Julianne did the hair,
Oh
and
my
Julianne,
God.
he also comes from theatrical world and doing paintings and makeup on himself, and he was my biggest fan. Come on, Francelle, you can do it. Go further. Do it, but do it a little bit messy and maybe put some in the hair with me. And like it's again the collaboration process of working with people that you really respect and
Right.
being a team.
And who respect you and who respect you. That's a huge part of
That's
it.
another one that's one for the books. I have a lot from Annie that
Yeah.
like that.
Okay, so let's talk about Mr. McDean, who we all love. How did you first meet, and what was the first shoot you did together, or one of the early shoots? And then take us behind the scenes on one of his sets, one of the favorite shoots that you have done with him.
My first shoot with Craig McDean was 2009. It was for a Dior book that he did, and it was my first introduction to him. And I always have loved his images. I've loved everything that he's ever done. He's another one that is just unbelievably technical when it comes to light and cameras, and he switches it a lot. And I always have said Craig McDean makes you a better makeup artist because you really need to learn light you need to learn how the different camera lenses. He uses so
Oh.
many different mediums. He does film. He'll do a Rolleiflex, which is like an old camera that's like a movie camera that is like a slower speed. It's very cool. And I remember working on that Dior job with him, and I was just like, oh my God, he is such an incredible photographer. And then he started to book me more with Carl Templer for Fabian Baron's interview. So we would do a lot of sittings with celebrities. I remember doing Jack White and painting him completely white with like red on his eyelids with
Oh
feathers.
my God.
Tabitha styled that one because they were really good friends, Jack and Tabitha, and that was an amazing shoot. Craig is someone that I work a lot with, Grace Coddington with, and we're all very close now. We've become very good friends, and I think working with Craig and Grace together really it's something else because the way that they work together is very different than the way that she works with Annie and Jamie. And it's because they've known each other for so long. They're also both English, and
Hmm.
that also brings a flair to his pictures. And I feel with Craig, the mediums change so much, meaning like the light and the different camera lenses and stuff like that, that you constantly you got to work quick, quick, quick.
But
And
like what? I never knew that. Like that a lens, like not changing the where they are. Let's say it's outside to inside, but that just changing the lens and the light would, oh, I guess I would assume with the light if it was a drastic change, but what are the changes that have to be made when he changes the camera? Are there
it does
specific
something
things that
different to
you
the
know?
face. It does something
Oh.
different to the face. So that he was one of the first people in my career that I had to learn technique. He really taught
Mm.
me about photography, like on how Annie is. It's a very set scenario. Everybody has their own different process, but with Craig, he'll try many different things until he sees the right thing that he wants
Right,
to.
right,
And I think being a makeup artist in that world, it's not like you can just do one set face because once you start changing the light, he'll do a bell car light, he'll do a light above, he'll do different, many, many different types of things. And once it starts and you start getting the right type of light, then I go in and change it up a little bit. And
so what would it emphasize eye over lip, or like would you be darkening one or the other, or
sometimes, or shadows, that it makes a
oh,
huge difference with the shadow or the curve of the light. Different lights do different things to the skin tone. It brings
oh
out different
right,
colors. He does a lot of desaturation or oversaturation. The thing with Craig is that he's so multifaceted, and being a makeup artist, you have to, it's working on the fly. And that's
right,
where it's like the way that I work with him, I get to a good place in the makeup chair, and then when the subject goes on there on into the set, and once we start getting the light right, because he'll change things to make it right. And
yeah, I've
that's what I
seen
really,
him. I've seen the multiple cameras.
yeah.
Angelina Jolie, he even used the small video camera, old school
Mhm.
film camera.
I love that.
So yeah, so I've seen the quick changes where it's almost like his assistants are each holding a different camera.
Right.
Right. I didn't,
That makes you a better artist though, because you're working on
yeah.
the fly and you're working quick, and you have to have the right type of things on the set because he's not, yes, I'm be like, Craig, wait for me for 5 minutes, let me go get them. Like, that's why I'm like, I learned very early on, bring everything on set
Yep.
and then let him have a moment with the person that we're shooting so he can find his mood and find the light that he wants. And then I'll go and add things.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then,
Because the worst thing is when they got it and someone's doing a touch up. It's
right.
Annie's like, get out of the like, yeah.
I've learned that. No way. And also with celebrity, it's very tricky when you're doing things and you're working with so many different type of variables. That's why when I shoot celebrities with Craig, I always like him to get his mood first. And then we'll do different things like something that we did with Jennifer Connelly for Beyond Noise. I did this really geometric like shape eyeliner, but I did that on set because with the eyeliner that I did in the makeup room, which is just underneath the eye. But then the way that he lit it, and he had this amazing set as well. And she was holding a flower. I was like, oh, maybe I'm just going to go in there and just make a triangle and bring it out. And it wound up being the cover, and her face
Oh my God.
is amazing. But you don't see those things until you're actually in the moment. And that's why I always say he makes you a better artist because you learn light. I learned technique, I learned cameras. I didn't know any of that stuff. And I remember the day when I first started working with him and then doing all the interview magazines. I didn't do all of them, but I did a bunch, and to watch his process, it's incredible.
Probably why he wants to keep working with you too, because there's a lot of artists, they have their thing, they do it. Either they don't know how to adjust or they're just not interested. You know what I mean? It's like, I did my part. Like, you make the light work for my makeup, you know? So to have someone that was willing and to actually get so into it and know by him saying, I'm switching to, you can overhear him say, give me this camera. And you already know in your head. Yeah.
He doesn't announce it. And that's, again, respecting the process and being a part of the process and knowing. And we'll do these sittings with Grace. We did one with Sarah where it's multiple people. It's like 7 people a day. So that's also very different. 7 different people, 7 different skin tones, 7 different things where I have my assistants kind of get them to a place.
Right.
I always do other things on set because with him, it's really learning the light and learning the mood. And that to me really came full circle for me as an artist because it makes you a better artist because you got to think quick and you're making a timeless image. And that's what it's all about for me.
That is amazing. So we could talk forever, but I'm conscious of everyone.
Just say one more thing.
Yeah. Say anything.
There was a question, what's your favorite shoot from Craig?
Oh, yeah.
And my favorite shoot that I've ever done with Craig McDean is one of my all-time favorite muses. I've worked a bunch with her, is with Winona Ryder. I shot her with 2013 cover of Interview called Templar, and then we just did another magazine with Katie Shillingford with her, and Jimmy Paul did the amazing like spiky goth hair, and I did like a really crazy goth eyeliner. I love Winona. I've done a lot of stuff with her, and to me, like to see the difference, it's like they're not the same picture. They're completely different, and they look different. And it's amazing to see the different types of technique that Craig brings to the table, and that makes him one of the world's best photographers.
I mean, it's funny because I think I might have booked her when I booked her for Vogue, her Vogue cover years ago. It was Craig, and I think that was the first shoot he did with her. And we were actually talking about it, and she didn't show up the first day. So we had to do the whole shoot. Last minute, we got Amber because we were in LA, but she's incredible. I could see her being like your dream subject.
Oh,
I mean,
she's my dream.
You have her coming up in that grungy world. You have the goth side of her. You just this beautiful skin too, like and the eyes. Yeah.
I mean, she is the true muse for me. Like she's such an icon. And from another magazine, she asked me to go to Venice with her, and I did Beetlejuice press with her.
Oh my God.
I got to meet. It was like, again, a full circle moment for me being like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe. And she's the kindest person and she's incredible. She's got incredible music taste too.
So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask some questions that I categorize as looking back. So you've achieved your dreams. That little girl in her room in New Orleans with Vogue all over her walls is now working with the icons that you dreamed about. And you're at a place where hopefully you can look back without PTSD of the early years. But even if there's still some, you can appreciate those early years and the hustle and the struggle. And I do think how we handle hard times, rejection, which is going to happen to all of us, is sometimes more important than our successes and the covers we've done or who we've worked with. So can you tell us what the hardest part about your job is and how you've overcome hard times or rejection for all the younger people listening that are just where you were in New Orleans that don't know the steps to get to where you are now?
I think the hardest part about this job is losing an option that you wanted. Losing an option is the hardest part, and no one likes to hear that you've been released, but it's not taking personally as a must. It's like you can't, in a world where when we started, there were like 15 of us, hair and makeup, that did everything. And now the celebrities have their own people.
Mm-hmm.
There's 15 other people up for the job. There's so much more. There's so many more artists. So I think that's the hardest part of not putting your eggs all in one basket. And I always say to my younger crew that work with me, I'm like, be happy that you were considered.
Ooh, that's
Instead
good.
of being like, oh, I didn't get the job, they don't like me. Be grateful that you were even in
Your
the
name, yeah, exactly. That you're even in the mix. That is such a good way of thinking about it because it's true.
It's so true. And it happens on every type of job. Like everybody has, a job that like, oh, you could be up for a promotion and you don't get it, but you were
Right.
It's
Right.
that thing that I always think about. I love getting options. I love trying to make everything work. I like going into the unknown of working with people I've never worked with, or working with people and celebrities that might be a little scary, and they see my Instagram and I'm like in a full face of like silver makeup. But a lot of the people that I work with appreciate that, because for me, it's about the range, but you have to
Right.
follow your heart of what's going to be beneficial for you. This is my job. It's not my life. That's my biggest difference with a lot of people in the business where this is their entire thing. I love my job though. And, you have to be incredibly humble and grateful to be in it.
Yeah. And you have to flip the way you're thinking that you can ask yourself, have I ever not been available for someone that wanted me? Because that is the same thing on their side, that
That's
they are been rejected, that you chose another job. So it's
Mhm.
going to happen, but
It's
then you're going to get the next job.
Yep,
And, you know,
very true.
from our discussion today, it's obvious that you are passionate about what you do and that you absolutely love it. And it's almost a part of you, right? What is it that you love most about it? What keeps you inspired and also in the same breath from what helps you to not burn out?
I think for me, it's the joy of going to work and experiencing something new every day.
Hmm.
It's a different creative challenge every day. And that's why I like being on the fashion side, because and model side, because it's something different every time you get to work. Where, and I do celebrities too, and I'll do some do and goes where it's very different, where it's the celebrity's point of view and it's their image and they're walking on a red carpet. With fashion, it's a creative challenge, and it's in that mindset where you're like, okay, it's a new day at the theater. It's like you have to
Right.
set, you have to look at the light, you have to look at what we're going to do, and it's the art of being creative. And I think that's what keeps the gas burning. I'm going to be doing this until I'm in my 80s. I look at all my friends, and
Yeah.
I look at someone like Grace, and she
Yeah.
loves it, and Didier and Julianne, and people that really love this business because they love to be creative, and that's the
Yeah.
creative masters of what they do. And
Yeah. No one retires. The
no,
listeners have
no
heard
one,
me say
no one
this.
ages and no one retires.
Exactly. And if you could give any advice to your younger self or to the girl who's living far away from here, working in a salon or at a makeup counter, dreaming of seeing her name in the credits of her favorite fashion magazine, what would be one of the most important things you'd want her to know?
Never give up. Never give up. Don't compare yourself to others. Do you? And everybody has a different path and a different momentum in life. And that's something that I've learned as I've gotten older. I don't compare myself to other makeup brands or other makeup artists. Everybody has their own path. And if it's fulfilling the cup that you want, and it's igniting that fire to be creative, you're on the right path.
I love it. Okay, so at the end of each episode, I like to ask my guests 7 rapid fire questions.
I love this. I love
Everyone
Phyllis's answers.
everyone gets the same this or that. So it's 2 things, this or that.
Okay.
Very, very simple. Very simple. Okay. AM or PM?
AM.
Text or talk?
Talk.
Uber or Subway?
Subway.
Book or film?
Film.
Sweet or spicy?
Spicy.
That's what I thought. Spots or stripes?
Spots. I have spots on today.
Oh, yes, you do. Okay, last one. Top or bottom?
Top.
Yes, just like your besties. Phyllis and
top,
Grace.
yes.
Phyllis and Grace. Both tops. Both tops. Well, thank you so much. It was so fun today.
It was amazing. Oh my God. Thank you so much for having me.
And I hope to see you on a shoot soon.
I know. I hope to see you soon. If I come out east, I'll hit you up too. See where you're at.
Awesome. Bye. Okay, that's our show. Thanks for listening to Going Rogue. And be sure to like and subscribe. Today's show is produced by me and Maddie Rosenberg at Radio Free Rhinecliff with assistance from Maddie Kelly. Special thanks to David Vo for our great graphics and Taras Romanov for our epic theme music. See you next Friday.